All right. Welcome back, friends. Thanks for joining me on another week of Real Estate Bites. This is Real Estate Bites number 22. We're still going strong here, so this is awesome. The This program comes to you every Friday, live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and X or Twitter at noon, the lunch hour. That's why we call it Real Estate Bites. Give you something to chew on the rest of your day when it comes to local real estate news and statistics. Like to bring a little topic to you every week, trying to pull back the curtain a little bit, talking about industry news or insights. But before we get into that, we always talk local real estate statistics. Once again, a reminder, all these stats, I pull them every Friday at 8 a.m. from the local MLS throughout Lorain County. And it is single family homes and condos sold. I don't do multifamily. I don't do mobile homes. So without further ado, let's get into these statistics for real estate sales over the last week. Okay. So the current inventory is 390. That's the first time that inventory has dipped under 400 since late October. Might be as a result of, as you can see, last week there were 78 closings. That's been the most that we've seen, since early October, mid-October, when there were 84 closings in a week. So that probably certainly had an effect on this inventory going lower. The median home value of sales last week was $227,000. The average square foot price was $146.10. You can see that square foot pricing has remained pretty steady now for weeks and weeks and weeks. You see a bump up here at 150, 159. During the summer, it was around 160, 161. The town boasting the most sales last week was Lorain with 15 of the 78 closings. So I'll tell you what, guys, this Lorain and Elyria, I've been doing this now since August. And Lorain and Elyria, except for one time, have claimed the top spot for sales every single week, which really shouldn't come as a surprise since they're the two most populous communities in the county. So I think this might be a stat line that I get rid of as we walk into the new year, because they're probably always going to be, Lorain and Elyria is always going to be 1 and 2 or thereabouts in this particular statistic of the most closings in a week's time. The lowest price sale last week was $45,000 in the city of Lorain. The highest price sale was $922,500 in the city of Avon. This was in Redtail. It was new construction. We've looked at new construction here a few times. And it's all kind of the same thing, right? Again, new construction, a square foot price that's 30 to 40%, more like 40% above your average square foot price. Open concept, blah blah blah, beautiful architecture, blah blah blah. On trend colors and finishes, blah blah blah. They may be built different, laid out a little bit different, but the finishes and stuff all kind of look the same. So usually I go through pictures of that particular property, but I'm not going to bother with it this week. The next statistic here, this next stat line, is the sold price to list price ratio or percentage. You can see for the second week in a row, we are at 98%. So again, we were above 100 very consistently after I started this. And then we've watched it drop to at or around or slightly below 100% now. That seems to be the prevailing theme over the last 2.5 months. Again, this is a leading indicator to me as to what's going on with pricing in the market. Are we appreciating? Are we staying? Is it flatlining? Is it going down? It appears to be holding steady. Prices are remaining stable. They're not going up. They're not going down. They're staying about the same. This obviously the list price to sale price ratio, or rather sale price to list price ratio, is how close to the list price did it actually sell for. Um, a little more insight on this particular number. It doesn't necessarily mean the original list price. It means the price it was listed at when it finally sold. That is where the ratio comes from. So the current list price, when the contract is accepted and the house is eventually sold, that is where this number comes from. So there's a number of cases where the house is listed higher than the list price that went into this calculation. Nevertheless, this is the number I watch closely week to week to determine whether or not we are appreciating, staying still, or depreciating in home values in real time. Our next stat line is average days on market over this last week was 33. And then the mortgage rate market opened up this morning at 6.66% for a 30-year conventional note. Obviously, 15-year notes, you can get a better rate, and FHA notes are a better rate as well. But, where we saw 8% back in October, we have dropped significantly. Economists and Fed analysts, they both indicate that we are going to continue to drop in interest rates. I think we probably settled somewhere between 5.5% and 6% next year, as they pull back rates very slowly over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. That is this week in our statistics. So let's get on to the topic of the day, which is all the ways that I screwed up my first real estate investment. Wealth building is a topic that's come up in the past on this little program. It's going to continue to come up. I believe it is important for all of us, especially you good people out there, to work on building your wealth. It's not necessarily the amount that's important as much as it is you taking the time and the effort to educate yourself on how to build your wealth little by little, so that someday you can leave a legacy for your family and teach them exactly how you built that wealth. And I'll tell a story as to why I think this is so important. So, when I was a kid, and one of the frequent times I was being reprimanded for being maybe a touch out of control, or lax on the few responsibilities I had as a kid. My father would say things like, son, all you want to do is play. All you want to do are the things that Jonathan wants to do. And, he was right. And another thing is, though, it hasn't changed. It hasn't changed, Dad. I'm still that same kid that just wants to play and wants to do the things that I want to do without answering to other people. And, that, in my estimation, is what freedom is: the ability to do what you want when you want, and you're not really worried about what it costs or who's giving you permission. So how do you get that freedom in Western society? Well, you only get it if you have a store of wealth. And now, again, when I say quantity doesn't necessarily matter, the amount of wealth that you need built up varies depending upon the lifestyle you want to live. Nevertheless, seek it. More good people need more wealth in this nation. Pursue it, please. So in my pursuit, I chose real estate investment as one of the vehicles that I wanted to pursue. And so in 2018, I bought my first rental property. And, for almost 2 years prior to that, I had been studying and reading and, read a handful of books, listened to the Bigger Pockets in the Real Estate Guys podcast with frequency, trying to figure out how I wanted to do this, how I wanted to get in, listen to strategies, listen to stories. And, one of the things that came up consistently was, buying your first one is the hardest step you'll ever take. So go buy your first one. And I convinced myself I needed to do this. Man, I got all fired up, and, I liquidated a small 401k that I had in order to buy my first one. So being as that it was my first one, I made all kinds of mistakes. Okay. So I just wanted to talk about those two guys in case you are considering getting into the investment market as a buy and hold real estate investor. Um, or, maybe you have properties already and you just want to be entertained by someone who screwed up. So here we go. The first big mistake had to do with the money, of course. So, like I said, I liquidated a 401k and I don't regret it. I paid a penalty to do so because obviously I was not of retirement age, and paid a penalty to liquidate that 401k. No regrets there. But, even against the advice of my loan officer, I put in a hefty down payment. Instead of doing the minimum 20% that was required, I put down a 35% deposit. Why? I mean, because I wanted that payment to be lower, and 35 grand was as much as I wanted to put into it while still hanging on to some of that 401k cash to do with whatever I wanted to do. And, I realized later that had I had just gone 20% versus, the 35 that I put in, well, yeah, it would have cash flowed a little bit less, but not that significantly less, and certainly not so significantly that it would listen, it would have been better just to hang on to the extra cash to do with what I wanted to do with it. I probably could have used that for a second down payment somewhere else, or make repairs or have for my family or vacate, whatever, right? But staying liquid would have probably been a better idea than putting an extra 15% down on this property, right? Another financial mistake I made was that I probably could have negotiated a better price. I was eager. I was fired up. I don't know how much activity they had. Um, I don't think they had a whole lot of activity on the place, but I wanted to get into it. And so I kind of, had this number in mind where, if it gets there, I'm okay. And it got there and I was okay. And I just went for it. And I probably could have negotiated a few more $1,000s back into my pocket just by sticking to my guns and being better at it. And, learn that lesson and have stuck with sticking to the number that makes the most sense and is the most beneficial to me ever since then. So those couple big financial mistakes, they listen, they dogged me the entire time. I paid more and I put more cash up front than I should have. Mistake number two, and this is a big one. Okay, this may be the biggest one, and likely is so. They say real estate's all about location, location, location. Well, I bought this house in a not so good neighborhood. And how do I measure a not so good neighborhood? Well, I measure it, number one, with looking at home values of the neighbors to the house that I bought, right? The home values in this neighborhood were depressed, to say the least. You take similar square footage in a similar home and other communities or even other neighborhoods in this community, and the price was significantly better. Why were the home values depressed in this neighborhood? Well, two things. They're probably related to one another. A lot of other homes in the neighborhood were in disrepair. And another reason was the crime in the neighborhood. I would say, I think it was in the 5 years that I owned it, I bought in 2018. I finally sold in just this summer of 2023. In the 5 years that I bought it, there was at least one person who was shot dead on the very street where this house was every single year. So high crime, depressed values, not the kind of neighborhood I probably should have invested in for my first property. And now look, there are people who do well investing in these types of neighborhoods. There are people who specialize in investing in these types of neighborhoods. I didn't have those skills, and it turned out not so good for me. When I sold this place over the summer, I felt like I gained years back on my life. Okay, so mistake number three, and then this one probably gave me the most headache, though it probably would not have been so bad had I not have made mistake number two when it came to location. And mistake number three was hiring a property manager. That might sound silly, but let me explain to you why. So when I bought this place, it was a 100-plus-year-old home, in good condition for its age. And there was a tenant already in there. It already had a renter. So I thought, okay, I can afford it. It's going to cash flow real nicely. There's already a tenant in place. This is fantastic. So buy the place. I'm now a brand new landlord, and I'm working with these tenants. And it took 3 months before payments started to come in late, and then not at all. Now this couple had babies, and the thought of evicting the babies, it made me feel a bit ill. I can tell you that at this point, I've gotten over that illness. I recognize this is a business, and my family counts on me running this business successfully. So while I've gotten over it at the time, it was really tough. And I just, the thought of, again, evicting a baby, or multiple babies, just felt pretty terrible to me. So I decided, hey, since I don't have the guts to do it, I'll hire someone else to do it. And so I did, and I went and found a property management company who had similar type properties in similar type neighborhoods, and in this neighborhood, in this community. And I took them on. I vetted them out by doing online research. I actually called them and had them send me references for other landlords. I called those people, talked to them. I read reviews online, and it seemed like tenants who left reviews for this company hated them, and landlords had good things to say about them. So I could see clearly whose side they were on, right? So that was attractive to me as a brand new landlord. And they were going to do the heavy lifting for me, right? So I took these people on, and the mistake lies in this facet, right? They didn't care about me, little old me with my one property in a rough neighborhood. They didn't care. They got clients who have dozens, if not hundreds, of properties, and represent a large portion of their revenue and income versus my $80 a month that I was paying them. They didn't care, and they made it apparent over time by a terrible lack of communication. They placed a tenant eventually that ended up in eviction court 4 times. And the communication from them the entire time was terrible. So 4 times they were in eviction court, and they kept telling me this story about how the magistrate is making them wait. They have to keep them on. They have to give these people a chance to pay, all this kind of thing. And that the magistrate was just super friendly towards tenants and hated landlords. That was the story that this property management company kept giving me as I'm going through this misery and not collecting money and paying out this mortgage, blah, blah, blah. So after the second time, I decided I've got to go. I've got to go to this eviction court hearing and see what's going on and understand this. The third time they went, I had a work obligation. I simply couldn't make it. So when the fourth time rolled around, I decided that instead of evicting for non-payment, I just wanted them out. Let's evict them because we can, because they were on month to month. They hadn't signed a new lease. And so we can just tell them to leave. And so I go to the eviction court and sit there, and there's a number of people to the left and right of me, and I don't know who the tenants are because I didn't screen them, I didn't place them. And the magistrate addresses everyone and asks me why I'm there, and I tell him a half truth. I tell him I'm just there to observe. Well, he hears these cases, and then everyone leaves, and I'm the only one sitting there, and my property never came up. And so now I'm just sitting there feeling and looking stupid, and I call his attention, and I say, okay, listen, I didn't quite tell you the whole truth. I'm a landlord, and I was expecting my tenants to sit in front of you, but they're not here. Could you help me out? He tells me that the property management company canceled the case. And they didn't let me know that they had canceled the case, while I had let them know I intended to be present. And I asked him why, and he said, well, they didn't give a reason, but he assumed that the tenants probably left. So I leave the courthouse. I promptly called the property manager, and I say, hey, look, I showed up at court. No one was there. What's going on? And they tell me, yes, indeed, the tenant left. Okay, so they vacated the property. I get the keys, clean it up, and eventually sell it. hiring that property manager, they knew all the time that they were telling me that this tenant, that this magistrate was just super tenant friendly and hated landlords who, in the course of me sitting there, that was proved incorrectly as I watched him handle these cases in what seemed to be complete fairness towards both tenants and landlords. Very professional and very fair to the parties, and just went by the procedure and the facts that were involved in each case and did his job accordingly. That magistrate told me that because I had accepted um, their late payment based on them waiting for public assistance, anytime I was to evict based upon non-payment, I had to wait for them to receive public assistance, no matter how long it took, because I had already set a precedent that I was willing to wait for them to get that money. And once I evicted, basically because the lease was up and I could just send them out because the lease was up, then they had no defense to stand on and they could just leave. And I had that ability by the second time they went to eviction court. And the property manager knew this and never communicated it to me. And I probably spent another year and a half going through all this when I could have just evicted in the first place based upon the fact that their lease was up and they were month to month. Maybe I should have known this. Again, I'm a brand new landlord. Indeed, I was ignorant of these things, learned it the hard way. But come on, property manager, you could have helped me out a little bit instead of just taking my money for sending these people to court every time. Anyway, those were 3 gigantic mistakes I made with that first rental property. I can tell you that it did not deter me at all. Those mistakes and that pain was very, very informative, and I learned quite a bit, and it helped me get into my next 3 without having to make those same mistakes. Now, did I make mistakes in the next 3? Of course I did. And maybe we'll talk about those at a later date. But nevertheless, having learned those lessons, I'm more excited about my upcoming career in real estate investment than I ever was. So that's it. That's my story for today. Ladies and gents, thank you very, very much for being here. Listen, Merry Christmas. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. All right. I love you, people. I'll see you next week.